So I'm going to call this power questions for coaches and hypnotists. And these are questions you would ask yourself or questions you would ask your client, depending on where you're at. Now, why are questions so incredibly important? If you all have not read chapter 8 in Awaken the Giant Within by Anthony Robbins, it is the best chapter in the book by far, in my opinion. And Tony said that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. This chapter changed my life. I was 18 years old. I was in college. I was flunking out, and I was asking myself horrible questions like, what's wrong with me? Why am I such a loser? Why aren't things working out for me? Why is it so hard for me to learn? And one of the big epiphanies was that Tony said, any question you ask yourself, your mind's going to give you an answer, even if it has to make something up. And he said, you should ask yourself questions that give you answers that actually improve your life or move your life forward. And if you're not doing that, you're asking yourself really horrible questions. The other epiphany I had was I started to realize and consider, what are my questions? And here's something to put, something for you all to consider, not just for you, but for your clients. What are the questions that you're asking yourself, or what are the questions your clients are asking themselves, already presupposing to be true? The gold in what a client tells me is often not in their surface level report. It's in what that report is already presupposing to be true. What are they taking for granted as an inherent truth underneath the question? So if they ask the question like, why is everything always so hard for me? They're presupposing that life is harder for them than the average person. So what I realized was, when they're doing that, or when I allow myself to do that, I'm reinforcing a limiting belief. Does this make sense? If I'm going, why is everything always so hard for me? I'm reinforcing the belief that everything is going to be hard for me. And that is strengthening a limiting belief, even though I thought, when I asked myself the question, like, I'm focused on a solution here. I'm trying to make my life better. And what I was doing is I was corkscrewing myself into making my life worse and more challenging. And I didn't realize it. So the quality of the questions is so supremely important. It can change your emotional mental state. It can change what you focus on. It can change the direction your reticular activating system is flowing. It is absolutely everything. So I tried to break these down into different areas that I thought would be useful when you're troubleshooting either yourself and your business, or helping out your client, okay? Or dealing with those elusive things called relationships. So, okay, so let's get into this. So, goal alignment and priority setting. The purpose of this one is to clarify objectives and maintain focus on what matters most. So, the first question here is, what are the 3 most important things I can do today? We're going to start with this, and we're going to end with this at the end of today. Remember your MIT. Every day, this is the best way to prevent distraction, avoidance, ADD, masking, all the other things that we do, getting stuck in a coping stance. What are the 3 most important things I can do today? So if you're focused on your relationship, you can go, what are the 3 most important things I can do to make sure that I have and maintain a high quality relationship with my loved one or with myself? If it's with your business, what are the 3 most important things I can do today to help me reach my ultimate business goal? The second one is, if I was seriously playing to win, what would I do next? And the reason I love this question is, a lot of times when I'm thinking of what I need to do, it's surprising when I get really, really honest with myself, how much of my attention is skewed by what emotionally feels good, or what I just feel like doing because I enjoy it more, or what maybe I'm subtly avoiding because it's not going to feel good. And so, because of that, one of the things I realized was, a lot of times my mind would say, "Oh, let's make this today's goal," but really it was like maybe 80% driven by the desire to be successful, and 20% hedging my bets, or 20% staying in my comfort zone, or 20% something else. And so when I add this extra bit of like, look, if I was being really serious about winning, like if I had to win, gun to my head, you're going to kill my children if I don't succeed today, what would I do next? And oftentimes that produced a different answer than what I initially came up with. And I don't know if any of you have had that experience, but I sure did. And it was kind of uh, a bit unnerving to do that. So that's why I have that question in there. Okay. Can anyone relate to that, by the way? Noticing a difference, like a delta between like, okay, what's important today? And then like, okay, well, if I was really like no bullshit playing to win today, like if I had to get a new client today. So let's say you're starting your business, you go, look, if I had to get a new client today, like for real, what would I do? And then it's shocking to me because oftentimes I come up with a totally different answer than like, okay, what can I do today to get a new client? And I realized in that discovery that my answers I was producing were really still cushioned, at least padded by wanting to feel good and do what I enjoy or avoid something that feels bad. And then the other question is whenever I catch myself doing something and I'm feeling suspicious of its intention, I can go, how's what I'm doing now in service of my ultimate goal? Has anyone ever found themselves suddenly researching something you hadn't planned on researching that day? Googling something down a YouTube rabbit hole and you go, why am I now looking at a video on nutraceuticals or a video on working out when I thought I was going to work on my master class today or I had other plans? And it feels important. I'm playing with a new AI video editing software and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, how's what I'm doing now in service of my ultimate goal? This is not. I'm in service of comfort and truth. Okay. The next area I took a look at was problem solving and resourcefulness. The goal here is to, or the purpose is to shift from problem focused to solution focused thinking. So some core questions here is what can I do? If I'm faced with a challenge, I'm faced with a situation, something doesn't go as planned, I'm feeling down and go, okay, well, what can I do? What can I do in this situation? There may be certain things that are out of my control, but obviously there's going to be something that is within my control. I had some money goals for myself prior to my trip, and then all of a sudden my son's driving his car and all these lights come on, and we bought our son a hybrid, and all of a sudden the engine's fried, the controller's fried, the battery's fried, and all of a sudden his car is now in the shop and it looks like it might be $9,000 to repair it, which means I'm probably going to toss the car and buy a new one. And when that situation came up, it was a bit of unresourcefulness along with that, and all of a sudden it's okay, well, what can I do in this situation? Or if the website crashes, what can I do? Or if I'm feeling overwhelmed with my goal, what can I do? And a great metaphor to go along with this question is remember the jigsaw puzzle metaphors. Everyone remember the jigsaw puzzle metaphor? Where you're looking at your business, look at it like a jigsaw puzzle. And instead of focusing on the pieces that you're not sure how or where they go or how to fit them into place, focus on, well, what can I do? I can start with the corners. That I can do. What else can I do? I can do the sides next. And focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. What's the first step? Right? Chunk it down. This is reminding you of that ability to chunk things down. If it's a big, huge, overwhelming goal, okay, well, what's the first step? If you're thinking about your entire business, okay, well, just chunk it down to what's the first step until it feels manageable and you get that feeling of, I can totally do that. Here's another question that I absolutely love. This is a game changer. What if there's an easier way? I'm going to give you a couple versions of this in today's lesson, but what if there's an easier way to accomplish the goal that I'm doing? What if it's a lot easier than I thought? What if there's an easier way? This was when I went to hire my assistant via Upwork. I had been putting it off and putting off and putting off because I was concerned that like, oh, I have to have an operations manual. I have to figure out what I'm going to have her do. I have to fill up 25 or 30 or 40 hours worth of work for her. And then I started asking myself, what if there's an easier way? And all of a sudden I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm working way too hard here. I hired two people. I had them meet me on Zoom, and I took the most annoying, repetitive task that I had, and I did it on Zoom while I was recording the video for the last time. And then I asked them both to write up an operation on a Google Doc on how to do what they just saw me do in the video. And then I took the best one, hired her, got rid of the other one, and then said, you now do this every week. Next week, we're going to meet online and I'm going to show you my next most annoying task. I didn't call it annoying to them, but I said, in my mind, I'm going to pick the next annoying task and do that. And that's how I built the entire operations manual. And I was only paying her by the hour. So it didn't matter if I didn't have 20 hours worth of work for her to do initially. It was way easier than I thought. And I'd put it off for 2 years when I could have had someone on board helping me out, making my life easier. Okay. All right. So those are 3 questions for problem solving and resourcefulness. Next one is 3 core questions for reframing and perspective shifts. And the goal here is to transform limiting perspectives into empowering perspectives, right? To get our clients out of the gutter, back on track, or ourselves. So first question here is, what's great about this? What's wonderful about this situation? So when something happens, it's unexpected, it sucks. What's great about this? This is a tough question to ask when you're in a bad mood or when you're in a coping stance. But whenever I'm faced with a challenge, I go, what is great about this? So you have a breakup and you're all heartbroken over the breakup. Well, what's great about this? I became divorced. I suddenly had a lot more free time to work on my business and to spend with my kids and to play guitar than I did before. What else was great about this? I know this may sound trivial to you all, but it was a big deal to me. I was like, this means I get to have guitars in every room of the house and I can put my amplifier in the living room and no one's going to say anything about it. What else is great about this? I don't have to go to another French party Friday and Saturday night where I can't speak the language and I'm sitting around for 3 hours with a bunch of people I hardly know, not enjoying myself. I don't have to do that anymore. So there's always going to be something that's going to be great about the situation that's going on. Thank you for listening to me rant. Okay, next question is, how can I use this, right? How can we leverage this situation? What's great about this? How can I use this? I remember my senior year of college and I was stuck taking this astronomy course thinking like that I was going to like learn about constellations and it's going to be all romantic. I could use it in my fiction novel and it was all math and physics and it was so unbelievably boring. And I remember thinking, well, how can I use this? And what's great about this? And I was like, well, if I can make this fun, I can make anything fun. So I used it as a demonstration of the power of my mind and my mindset to take something that seems boring and make it fun. And that in itself made it a challenge and it gave it some meaning and it gave it some juice for me. Okay. Next question is, what can I learn from this? I'm a big believer that we can't always control what happens to us, but we get to control what we do with it. And I like the idea of being a great lemonade maker. So I feel like I can learn from everything. And some people show me what to do and some people show me what not to do. So I believe I can always learn from a situation. Okay. Next area is identity and role modeling. And so here the purpose would be to align actions with desired identity and leverage aspirational models. Consider someone you really admire, someone you really look up to. And you can do this in a context too. So you could do this like, okay, who's like your ultimate business mentor in your mind? You know, so I could go, okay, how would Richard Branson handle this situation? Just to give myself a new perspective or a new set of data. So some core questions here are, this is by the way, folks, if you're in relationships and you have relationship challenges, this is the number one question I teach my clients. How would a high value person handle this? Children of abuse try to make bad relationships work. This is one thing I've really learned and seen clearly over the last 3 years. Children who grew up in abusive households stay in abusive relationships and they keep trying to make the other person get it or see it or understand the error of their ways. They keep trying to turn a bad situation around. And it wasn't until I dated a few women who were like, I consider really high value, you know, God bless Lilian for that, because what I learned from modeling her is that high value people, when they are taken advantage of or when someone crosses their boundary, they may give them one chance and then they go, thank you for showing me who you are. Peace be with you. Hasta la vista. We are done. And they move on. But those of us who grew up in abusive households tend to well, let me give him another chance, and then let me give him another chance, and then let me give him another chance, and then, well, if I could just get them to see it this way, if I could just get them to have this breakthrough, we'll connect with that inner wounded child in them and just want to keep giving them chance after chance after chance. And when they keep showing us who they really are or where they're really at. Okay. So I know for me, when I ask myself, well, how would a high value person handle this situation? A lot of times my boundaries tighten up dramatically and I stop giving second, third, fourth, and 12th and 25th and 139th chances. Second question is, if I was 100% needless and had nothing to prove, how would I respond? How would I act in this situation? Another way to do this with clients is, I say, all right, James, pretend that there's a guy over here named Bill and he's not you, but he's just like you. Same situation, same setup, but it's not you. So we don't have to deal with the consequences of whatever decision he makes. But from an outside perspective, you see this guy, Bill, going through A, B, and C. What would you tell him is the best thing to do to get the greatest possible positive outcome that he's looking for? And so it's this idea, if we were totally needless, if we weren't trying to seek something or avoid something, if there was no emotion in there at all, how would we respond? If I was totally needless. Okay. I love that one. Next one is, what would the version of me who has already achieved my goals do right now? So this is something we often do in like future pacing. Step into your desired self. How have you already handled this? The next one is questions for separating meaning from data. This is another like huge reframe that we're doing with clients all the time. I was working with a client yesterday. I was working with my guy Taylor, and Taylor was, dealing with these grabs. And we started walking through structure of upset. And remember, in the first step, we go, what's the rule? If blank happens, I'm going to get upset, but you can't put meaning into it. And he goes, well, if my boss is being disrespectful, I'm going to get upset. And I said, yeah, but we can't see disrespectful on a videotape, right? We can't see that. We can't see angry on a videotape. We can see someone punch a wall on a videotape, and we'd probably call that anger, but we can't see anger on a videotape. We can see someone punching a wall. We can't see someone being disrespectful or hear someone being disrespectful, but we can hear a certain tone of voice that most of us would label as disrespectful. Do you see the difference there? But we could hear that different tone of voice. And what he realized when we did that was, it was like, oh, if someone, because his mind was saying, if someone's disrespecting me, here's how I'm gonna respond. But then in reality, he realized it was just if someone used a certain tone. There was a certain tone. If someone used that tone with him, he labeled that in his mind as disrespectful. So we're separating the meaning from data, and that gives people a little bit more breathing room. And sometimes it helps you see how silly your reaction response is. And he afterwards, he kind of chuckled. He goes, wow. He goes, I'm really sensitive to tone. And of course, do you think that was an old childhood anchor? Sure, it was. So the purpose of these questions is to separate facts from fiction, essentially. Get people out of delusion land, help people realize their projections and see it for what it really is. So some core questions here are, what are the pure facts versus the story I'm adding? So I said, you can't see your boss being disrespectful to you. We can't see that on a videotape. We can see him give you the finger. We can hear him use a certain tone, but we can't actually see him be disrespectful, because sometimes the meaning we make about things is really wackadoodle and skewed. And it's cool to see that light bulb go off in your client's mind, or to have you realize it goes off in your mind. You go, wow, I'm creating this huge story around a certain tone of voice. So what are the pure facts? What are the pure facts versus the story I'm adding? And if I had a videotape and a checklist, what would I actually see? Right. I also use that for present state and desired state externally. And then, of course, I can ask them about internal. But I always start with kind of externally. What would I see? If we had a videotape and a checklist. So when someone comes in for a weight loss program and I go, okay, well, if I had a videotape of you throughout the day, what would I actually see? I can't see them having a craving, but I can see them tearing open a box of Twinkies and eating half the box. That I can see, right? So again, we're separating fact from fiction there. And then what would a neutral observer see or hear? That's another kind of way to approach that. Someone who doesn't know anything about you or anything about the situation, if they're watching, so Michael, if some complete stranger was watching you and your girlfriend having a disagreement at the restaurant, what would they see? What would it look like to them? The point is, you could see how that would maybe add a layer of distinction, that because when we're really immersed in first person, it's kind of, again, sometimes hard to see clearly. Remember the old saying, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. Next one is unconscious patterns and limiting beliefs. So these are kind of questions to ferret out patterns running beneath the surface of consciousness, right? A lot of what we're doing as coaches is we're noticing patterns the clients go through and we're pulling them into conscious awareness and then helping them see them so they have more choice. When they're not conscious, they don't have a choice. When we can make them conscious, they have a choice. My anxiety client, every time she gets anxious and ramped up, she starts with, oh shit, or oh God, every single time. And then she tried to tell me she wasn't doing it anymore. And then I said, okay, cool. And she was getting better. And then all of a sudden on Father's Day, she had a little bit of panicky feeling, not a full-blown panic attack, but a little bit of a panicky feeling driving from where she lived to another town to go see her father-in-law with her partner. And I said, so walk me through it. When did you first notice yourself getting anxious? She's like, well, I was in the car or whatever. And then, all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, what if da 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 da? And I said, oh, there you did it again. And so she was still doing it. And so we pulled that pattern into her conscious awareness. So the purpose here is to uncover and transform deep-seated patterns and beliefs. So this is also an opportunity to take this reoccurring experience they're having in the present and help tie it back to an old limiting belief. So core questions for this one. What am I making this mean about me that I already fear to be true? Now, if you're with a client, I would start with the first part and then add the second part later. So for example, your client goes to you, says, oh, Diana, I'm really upset because the guy I went out on a date with last week, I thought it went great. He never called me this week. This always happens to me. The gold in that is you say to her, hey, when that happened, what did you make that mean about you? And what that's going to do is that's going to pull up a limiting belief. Right? Because she's going to give you some story like, oh, it means that there must be something wrong with me because once the guys meet me, they don't like me anymore. So it's always going to pull up a limiting belief. And then once you help her identify what it means, then you add on to that. You might explore that. You might peel a couple layers. And what did you make that mean about you? Because there's often this kind of almost like tree of beliefs. So she might say, this means he doesn't respect me. And you go, okay, well, have you felt this before with other men? Yes. Okay, so when men don't respect you, what do you make that mean about you? That means they think I'm not good enough. Okay, so again, you can get to a deeper belief. But eventually, the truth in it is that, remember, if you get grabbed at all, it's because what's occurring is validating something you already fear to be true about yourself. If we say, James, you are the darkest skinned man I've ever met, and you've got the biggest afro, that's probably not going to bother James because in his mind he goes, okay, maybe Robert's crazy, but obviously this can't be true. There's no part of you that would believe that that would be true. Correct, James? So it's not going to get to you. If I say, Michael, you've got the curliest, blondest hair I've ever seen, Michael's going to go, okay, Robert's off his medication, but he's not going to get bothered by it because you're not going to make it, because it doesn't feel true to you at all. But if I talk to either one of you about being a middle-aged man living in California, you might notice your breathing start to tighten, your jaw start to tighten, and it starts to feel personal because all of a sudden this could be in the realm of something that might already be true, right? And remember, for competency-based, we're competency-based because deep down we're fearful that we're incompetent. If we're freedom based because deep down we're afraid we're not going to be free. Or we're afraid that we're controlled or that we lack options. So otherwise, if we really believed it, we wouldn't be trying to prove it about ourselves. So you want to remember that when people are trying to prove their personal need about themselves, it's subtly reinforcing the shadow side, which is the belief that they're not. Okay. So this is a great one. Whenever you get grabbed or whenever someone else gets grabbed, ask yourself, what am I making this mean about me? And then add to that, and what am I making it mean about me that ultimately I fear to be true? If you go straight there with that first question all the way, you ask a client, what are you making it mean about you that you fear to be true? It's probably going to be harder for them to access it.
Robert, at the core of everything, does everything come down to avoiding pain or seeking pleasure? And I'll give you an example. So I have a client who has a belief that in order to make money, her expenses go as in correlation. And so I was trying to chunk down into what's the limiting belief because she manages to increase her expenses as her business increases.
Mhm.
And there's a part that just kind of keeps coming back to, okay, she needs some sort of approval, validation. And then as we're understanding, right, there's also fear of pain and rejection from her parents. So I that's where my question is coming. Like, does
Yeah.
everything come down to seeking pleasure, avoiding pain?
Well, I think it all comes down to those three biological drives because I think everything can be reduced down to. So remember, all of our personal needs are driven by what we believe our ego needs in order to survive. So it's all about survival. That's our number one biological goal, is to stay alive long enough to kind of keep life going. So because of that, we have three biological drives. Don't forget there's a third one: avoid pain, seek pleasure, and conserve energy. So that's what, like, if you think of lazy behavior, if you think of procrastination, things like that, that's because we are always making a calculation: is the risk worth the reward? So yes, I think it does come down to, we always have those three currents pulling us: craving, aversion, and energy conservation. Those are always going to be running underneath the surface to explain the subtle nuances of what's guiding your client. And what we interpret as painful and pleasurable and easy or hard also will be connected to our personal needs. So that's why I don't do anything without identifying the personal needs first. If I'm competency based, I believe that the way for me to ensure my survival the best is to be more competent than the average bear. So I'm going to focus my attention on making sure I'm competent first. Special may come later, belonging may become later, but competent is going to be the most important thing for me. Because as a competency based person, the more value I know I bring to you, the more I can just relax and enjoy life, and like life's good. So yeah, I think pretty much any issue a client comes to you with can be reduced down to that. Those are the three currents always running underneath the surface. But remember, because we know NLP, what we perceive as painful, what we perceive as pleasurable, and what we perceive as easy or hard is negotiable. We can adjust that. There are things that we all now see as the easy route when we were kids, maybe seemed like the hard route. And there are things, we all have things that at one point we thought were very pleasurable, and now we see them as very painful. Like being in a relationship with certain people. At one point, maybe it was wonderful. Today, it would feel like hell. Does that answer your question, Diana?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So the next question here is, what memory from my past is this feeling reminding me of? So if a client's really anxious and nervous, you can always do, yeah, and you don't have to do a formal guided search, but guided search is a great tool. So I'm just feeling really scared. Well, what memory is this reminding you of from the past? That'll probably take them back to an early imprint or maybe a trauma. So you can help pull that out. And what does my story presuppose to be true? What is the report they're giving you taken as a given? What is it presupposing is already true? All right, so the next one is avoidance and procrastination. I thought this was another useful area to talk about. Purpose here is to identify and address resistance and avoidance patterns, again, in ourselves and in others. So, core questions here. Great questions to ask yourself, but they're annoying questions. And you can all ask yourself this right now. What actions am I avoiding? What are you avoiding? Think about this for a minute, folks. Feel free to put one in the chat. What is something that you're kind of avoiding doing that would make a profound impact on your business or your life? Is there anything you're avoiding doing or putting off? Can you all think of something like that that you're kind of avoiding? or putting off that would make a profound impact? Next question. What am I overcomplicating? Is there something that I'm overcomplicating or making seem really harder than it is? Boy, do clients do this a lot. One pattern I see over and over again with clients and myself and others and all of you is taking something and giving it like a huge shadow. A little ant, if you look at it in the right way, can produce a huge shadow. And we'll take something like doing the master class and like making in this big thing. And if you guys ever notice that sometimes there'll be something you're really avoiding, you're putting off because you think it's gonna be hard, and then you wait until the last minute, and then finally you're forced to do it. Maybe like assignments in school, like a paper. And then when you actually did it, it was like, oh, that wasn't that hard. That wasn't that big of a deal. For me, I know preparing my tax stuff every year, my mind is always like, oh God, I don't want to do that. Oh, it's going to suck. You know, so I got all this stuff. I got all these different accounts. I got to figure out all this kind of stuff. And then I actually do it. And it's like, yeah, okay, that wasn't that big of a deal. Or doing rev share numbers for Tim and Nick when I'm sharing revenue with them. It's like, I'll put it off. I don't want to deal with it or whatever. And then when I actually do it, it's like not that hard. So what am I overcomplicating? Next one I thought would be useful is, what decisions am I avoiding making? Anyone here ever find yourself putting off making a decision just because it feels uncomfortable, and then again you wait till the last minute? Then you finally make a decision, like, why didn't I just do that like 6 months ago, a year ago? Why was I just absolutely avoiding that?
I have a question about that. Earlier, you were talking about that took you 2 years to make the decision to hire an assistant.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Because I'm guilty.
I was avoiding it because I was overcomplicating it, and I thought that it was going to be a whole bunch of work. And listen to the insanity. I was like, I'm too busy doing all these things I need an admin to do for me to build the operations manual so that I can have an admin do it for me. So I was overcomplicating it, and I was avoiding it because I perceived it, Diana, to be painful. I'm already busy. I'm already working all these hours a day. I'm already spending all my time seeing clients. I barely have energy to do the basic admin things as it is. How do I then have time to step out, go meta, and build up this operations manual on top of that? And all of that was just like, now, if I was coaching me in that situation, I'd say, this is nothing but evidence that you absolutely need to do it. And what if there's an easier way, Robert? What if you're overcomplicating it? How much time would you save, Rob? I would chunk it down. Go, Robert, how much time would you save? Well, like, what's one annoying task that you do that you could probably teach someone to do in an hour or less, that you have to do every week? And I'd say, oh my God, rebooking somebody and sending them the recording. That was the first thing I handed over. I was spending at the time an hour a day doing that for people. That's 7 hours in a week. And it was like a 30-minute Zoom meeting. The ad on Upwork, you know how long it took me to put my admin ad up on Upwork with personality profiling built into it? 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Not long. It was easy. Piece of cake. Last section is future self and legacy. And goal here is to connect long-term vision and values, right? Connect with long-term vision and values. Remember, when we're dealing with bad habits, when we're dealing with procrastination, when we're dealing with addiction, there's a timeline issue. The person has blinders on. They're thinking in the moment. They're not thinking long-term. So core questions here. What would my 80-year-old self advise me to do? What would my 80-year-old self advise me to do? How will I feel about this decision in 10 years? And what legacy am I creating with this choice? I'll give you guys an example. I made a decision to completely, I'd done it before. I did it for 4 years. I didn't drink at all for 4 years. And then when I was trying to repair my relationship with Dila, because she liked to drink, you know, I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll do it again. And so I did it for about 1.5 years or whatever. And then I heard an interview with John Mayer, of all people, talking about where he had a conversation with himself, and he said, what percentage of my potential do I really want? am I willing to accept? What percentage of my potential? And he goes, well, 100%. That's what I really want. And so he knew that in order for him as a musician to be 100% of his potential, he couldn't have anything like alcohol or drugs and stuff in his life. He wouldn't reach his potential to do that. So I made a decision to just completely teetotal and to just permanently do that. And one of the ways I anchored that in was I said, if I'm really honest with myself, have I ever regretted not drinking yesterday? Has anyone here ever regretted not drinking the day before? Never, right? Never. And then the other question I asked myself, because these are timeline expansion questions, right? That's the point of this conversation. The other question that came up is I said, will there ever be a day when I can honestly say, if I have alcohol, it'll make this situation better? It'll actually make it better. It'll actually get me a better result or a better outcome. And that'll never be true for me. So one question oriented me with the future, one question oriented me with the past. So for me, I thought that was really useful. Energy, vitality management, optimize personal energy for sustainable performance. Core questions. What gives me energy versus what drains me in this situation? How can I approach this in a way that feels energizing rather than depleting? And what boundaries do I need to set up to maintain my vitality? I had to create a list of what I was okay with in relationships and what I wasn't. I do this with a lot of clients. Diana, that might be something you probably already do with your clients, but a list of like no-goes, no-fly zones, a list of absolutely not okay. Okay. All right, real quick, daily 5 gratitude. You all know this one. What are 5 things I'm grateful for today? This redirects your reticular activating system to an empowering emotional state. Remember, there's 2 states of being, empowering and disempowering. So what are 5 things I can be grateful for today? People, places, and things, experiences, circumstances, or learning and goals. Next one is the daily 5. What are 5 things I'm looking forward to today? This is to redirect your reticular activating system towards what you want. And it has to be something I can do today, something that's within my power, and something that will enhance the quality of my life. And then the last one is, there we go, focus your attention, 3 most important things, right? What are the 3 most important actions I can take today that will create the most movement towards my ultimate goal, that will make the greatest impact in my life, and that are in alignment with my values and my goals? If you're not doing one of these 3 things today, you are distracted. So remember that. So if you sit down and do this after this call, what are the 3 most important things to do today, and you're not doing one of the 3, you're distracted unless you just have a straight up emergency. Hey, here's what I know about you as a coach or a high achiever. Look, you're constantly working on yourself, trying new strategies, pushing harder, but there's something you might not realize. There is an invisible force at work, a hidden pattern that's either accelerating everything you do or sabotaging it. This is the number 1 factor that makes or breaks every single thing you try to achieve. And guess what? It has influenced every major decision you've ever made in your entire life, from the car you drive to the place you live, the clothes you wear, the job or the business you create for yourself, and even in your mate. And most people never know what it is. Your nervous system works like a river. When you work with this hidden force, it's like flowing down river and things feel easy. But when you fight it, it's like swimming upstream. And I'll tell you something, after 23 years of coaching thousands of individuals all around the world, high achievers and coaches, I know exactly what that is, and I want to help you discover what it is for yourself. And to do that, I've built a simple 21 multiple choice question test. It takes less than 5 minutes to go through the test, and it will send you a full report so you know exactly what your hidden force is for you. So go to nlpca.com right now, click on the free personality test, answer the questions. It will send you the report immediately, and you're off to the races. Good luck, and I look forward to hopefully meeting you very soon.